Well, good morning, Lakeshore. How you guys doing? Good, good, good. It's great to be back here in Rochester. I just had an awesome opportunity. Spent 24 days in Italy. Everybody say, ooh, Italy. Thanks, Patrick, for that idea. Anyway, so what was I doing in Italy? It was great because my wife and I got to lead a team of 8 people to do a missions trip in Italy. We led an English sports camp, and it was an absolutely incredible time. And so I want to thank those of you who prayed for us, who supported us and got us there. And we'll look forward to maybe sharing some details on that in the coming weeks. The other thing that we got to do in Italy, my wife is from Italy, so we got to spend time with her family, which is always a great time when we get to spend time with her family there and go to the beach and enjoy that time. So it's great to be back, though. What happened to summer? We left Rome, it was 95 and humid. We come back to Rochester, it's 62 and I'm wearing a sweater. Did you guys vote summer off the island? What happened? Well, hopefully we're going to get some encouragement, even though we don't have summer here. Hopefully we'll get some encouragement as we continue today in our hashtag encouragement series. Glad to see that the series got kicked off well with Bishop Dave Singleton. Always a pleasure to have Bishop Dave with us. And then continuing with Pastor Brian and Pastor Corey last week. And so today you get me all jet-lagged. Yes, I was up at 4 a.m. trying to figure out why am I still awake here. So today we're going to talk about God encourages me even when I fail. And I think I am highly qualified to talk about failures in life. Yeah, you can laugh. Thank you. That was a fail. See, a fail moment. The joke just failed. So our culture seems to have a huge fascination with failure. Not our own failure, of course. We're fascinated with other people's failures, right? When we see someone who makes a stupid mistake or someone who has a momentary lapse of judgment, we seem to get a kick out of that, right? Our culture even has a phrase for it. Maybe you've heard it. It's called epic fail. Do you know what an epic fail is? According to Urban Dictionary, an epic fail is a mistake of such monumental proportions that it requires its own term in order to successfully point out the unfathomable shortcomings of an individual or a group of people. There are websites dedicated to epic fails. People write blogs dedicated to epic fails. On social media, maybe you've seen some of the memes on epic fail. If you were to go out to YouTube right now and type epic fail in the search bar, you would find 23,200 videos containing epic fails. Have you seen any of these videos? It's like not America's Got Talent, wrong show. It's like America's Funniest Home Videos on steroids. Let's check out some of these. Leave my mic on because I'd like to make some commentary as we go through. Yeah, nice shot. Watch this one. Look, Ma, no helmet. And he survived. Wow. Listen to the language this guy speaks.
Scare me, that guy.
Hama, 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 hama. You know what's going to happen here. Watch this. But here's the real surprise. Look, there's somebody down there waiting to save him. This is real popular, a gender reveal party. I'll kill you and I'll make another one that looks just like you. I think this is my favorite because as a parent, I've probably put hundreds of dollars of coins in these dumb machines just to get the little rubber ball. And this kid is thinking to himself, I got it, I got it, I got it. But watch. And guys, don't try this at home. You know, it's fun to laugh at the epic fails of others. It is fun to laugh, but it's not so funny when the epic fail is due to our own shortcomings. So what exactly what exactly have you failed at? You may have never been chased by a bear. You may have never crashed your four-wheeler into the back of an SUV and survived. You may have never fallen off a ladder or a cliff, but we've all had epic fail moments in our lives. The truth is, each one of us right now can be one or two steps away from an epic fail. We could be one or two bad decisions, poor choices, from an epic fail. In your life, maybe you've spoken words that are harsh, or out of line, or inappropriate. Maybe you've let anger get the best of you with your kids. Maybe you consistently make poor food choices. You fail diets. Maybe you're the kind of person that compares yourself to others and sinks deeper into depression. Maybe your marriage has failed. Maybe it was your fault. Maybe you got high again. Maybe you gambled your rent away, or simply have given up on a difficult situation in your life. When people look at these epic failures, what do they see? Do they see you as a failure? Have you been labeled as a failure? Have you labeled yourself as a failure? I want to encourage you, if that's the case, there is always room for a comeback. Every mistake, every failure you've ever made is recoverable, and there is room for forgiveness. Yes, there are oftentimes consequences to the choices we make. There are consequences in our failures. There are sometimes costs associated with our failures. But I'm here to tell you today that no failure is so epic that it will prevent you from receiving encouragement and forgiveness from God. Why? Because I've said this before, our God is a God of second chances. Our God's desire is for you to overcome failure, not to be overcome by it. Let me say that again. Our God's desire is for you to be an overcomer, not be overcome by failure. Our God's desire is for you to be encouraged, to pick yourself up and continue walking. This is clear in the Bible. There's a book, it's in the section of the Bible known as the wisdom books. It's called the book of Proverbs. If you've never read Proverbs, I encourage you, take time, go through it. It's 31 chapters, you can go through it in a month. Proverbs 24, verse 16, it's in your notes. It says, no matter how many times you trip them up, God-loyal people don't stay down long. Soon they're up on their feet, while the wicked end up flat on their faces. You see, God-loyal people are those who pick themselves up. God-loyal people are those that wipe the dust off. They get back up on their feet again, and they carry on. Sure, they have moments when they're down. Sure, they have moments of doubt. Sure, they have moments when they may have felt like a failure. But the difference is that they listen to the encouraging words of our God. Our God's a gentleman. He doesn't yell, he doesn't shout, but he whispers words of encouragement. Come on, you can do it. Get up. I'll give you strength. Get up. You can do it. You can overcome this. This is not a dead-end road. Get on your feet. God-loyal people remain loyal through the ups and downs of life because they know that God is right there by their sides. And they remain obedient to God through it all. On the other hand, wicked people, they listen to the demoralizing shouts of the devil rather than those encouraging whispers of God. The more they listen to the devil, they believe his lies. His lies say, "You're no good. You're a piece of garbage. Don't even bother. It's not worth it. You are a failure. And everything you do, everything you touch is invaluable." The more they listen to those words, the more they believe. And I bet there are some of you right now that have listened to those shouts. And I'm here to tell you, you need to stop. It's time to start listening to the encouraging whispers of our God. Too many people feel like they've failed. Too many people feel like their failure is so epic that they cannot receive encouragement. And while so many people desire that encouragement, there is one thing that prevents them from receiving encouragement from God. Do you know what it is? It's the stigma of failure. Our culture has put such a stigma on failure. And so if you want to receive encouragement from God, the first thing that you need to do is get over the stigma of failure. That's your first fill-in. Before you receive encouragement from God, get over the stigma of failure. You see, too many people in this room right now, they're holding on to that stigma like a badge of dishonor that's attached to their chest. If you want to honor God in your life, if you want to receive encouragement from God through your failure, you've got to get over the stigma of failure. You see, it's a mind game. It's all about how you perceive failure. It's a matter of changing your perspective on failure. It's a matter of seeing yourself the way God truly sees you. Do you know how God sees you? When He looks at you, He is so in love with you. When you enter the room, our God lights up like a Christmas tree. He is so crazy mad in love with you. He is so in love with you, He sent His one and only Son, Jesus, to die on the cross so that you can have a relationship with Him. That's how crazy mad love our God is about you. And He wants nothing more than to see you overcome whatever failure is in your life. I talked about changing perspective on failures. I want to share some quotes with you from some people, famous people who have experienced failure in their lives. Thomas Edison, the inventor, has failed more than once. He said, "I haven't failed." Hear the perspective? I said he failed, but no, he says, "I haven't failed. I just found 10,000 ways that don't work." Albert Einstein said, "You never fail until you stop trying." Elon Musk, who is the co-founder of PayPal, he's a CEO of SpaceX and Tesla Motors, he said, "Failure is an option here." Right? Too many times we hear, failure is not an option. Listen to what Elon Musk says. Failure is an option here. If things aren't failing, you aren't innovating enough. You're not taking enough risks. Today, I want to talk to you about somebody from the Bible who took risks for God. He took risks just by following Jesus. And unfortunately, along the way, he failed miserably. Why did he fail? We'll talk about that in a moment. But here's the one thing I can say about him right now. He overcame the stigma of failure. He was able to rise up to new challenges and accomplish the will of God in his life, which in my book is the true definition of success. Success is when you accomplish the will of God in your life. The person I'm talking about is the Apostle Peter. We're going to take a look at the story of Peter and an encounter he had with Jesus, but I want to give you a little background first. At the Last Supper, when Jesus was with his disciples the night before he went to the cross, he tells his disciples that they are all going to fall away on account of him. And Peter, who was one of Jesus' first followers, you have to understand, Peter was a fisherman before he followed Jesus. And fishermen at that time and in that culture, they were known as gruff and rough individuals. They were a little unkempt, they were sometimes vile, and sometimes they used foul language. Peter was known to be outspoken and a little boisterous. And so when Jesus said that all of his followers are going to fall away, Peter quips up and says, "Even if all fall away, I will never." Jesus turns around and says, "Tonight, Peter, tonight, legit, you're going to disown me 3 times. Yeah, I had to put that word legit in there. On vacation, I heard that word so many times from my daughter. I was like, legit, that's annoying. So I just wanted to share my pain with you a little bit here today. So Jesus says, tonight, legit, you will disown me 3 times before the rooster crows. Peter comes back, even if I have to die with you, I will, Jesus. So Jesus gets arrested. The disciples scatter. Peter ends up taking a risk. Peter follows Jesus as he's arrested. Peter gets close enough to see what's happening, but he stays back far enough not to get caught as a follower of Jesus. And in the course of that evening, as people are coming up to Peter and saying, "Didn't I see you with Jesus?" Or, "Don't you know Jesus?" From your accent gives you away. You're from Galilee. You must know Jesus. Jesus said 3 times, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know the man." He even called down curses upon himself. And when he denied Jesus that 3rd time, just as Jesus said, the rooster crowed. And in that moment, Scripture tells us that Peter wept bitterly. You can go back and look at this in Matthew chapter 26. Peter wept bitterly. He knew that he had failed miserably, and he was truly repentant in that moment. But yet, he still felt the stigma of failure. So Jesus was tried. He was convicted. He was punished. He was crucified on the cross. He died, was buried, rose 3 days later from the grave. And over the course of 50 days after rising from the dead, Jesus appears before his disciples. And I want to take a look at one of those encounters today. So if you have a Bible, turn to John chapter 21. And just a little more background on that. So in John chapter 21, Peter and the boys, the disciples, they go back to fish. You can imagine, after the events of the crucifixion, they were probably a little discouraged. And so they went back to what they knew. They went back to fishing. And they're out fishing overnight, and the Bible tells us in John 21, they don't catch anything. It's a long night. Now it's morning. Jesus is standing on the shore, but they're still far enough away that they don't see that it's Jesus, and he doesn't tell them that it's Jesus. And he yells out. I can imagine Jesus being a little sarcastic. "So, did you guys catch anything?" And they yell back, "No." Jesus, why don't you put your net on the other side of the boat? I can picture Peter. Who does this guy think he is? Put the net on the other one. They put the net on the other side of the boat. There's so many fish, they can hardly bring it in. At that moment, they realize it's Jesus. And they come back to shore, and Jesus has a little barbecue going for them, a little breakfast. And that's where we pick up in John chapter 21, verse 15 to 17. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him a third time. He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. And so from this passage, I want to share 5 ways that God encourages you when you fail. The first way that he encourages you when you fail is that he inspires you to examine your heart. He inspires you to examine your heart. When we were in Italy, part of the time that we spent in Italy, it was part vacation, part missions trip, but really we went to help my in-laws. Many of you probably don't know this, but my father-in-law is an amputee. He had his right leg cut off because of complications with diabetes. And so while that has healed, he most recently had to go back in. He had an infection in his one remaining foot. And unfortunately, they had to cut off his toes. And so now he is missing his leg and is missing his toes. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle. This man who was a farmer, this man who was rough and tough, this man who was military when he was younger, it's hard to see him like that. But you know what? He doesn't complain. The man does not complain. Of course, I don't understand all his Italian, so maybe he is complaining. I'm just kidding. But here's what happens is a couple times a week, there's a visiting nurse that comes in, and she takes the dressing off of his foot, and she examines where his toes once were. She's looking for infection. And as she examines, sometimes she has to probe. And it's really hard to see this man who is so rough and tough when he sees stars because the pain is so much. And sometimes she has to go a little deeper, and the deeper she goes, the more it hurts. And so it was for Peter. Jesus probed Peter's heart 3 times, asking him, do you love me? Probably 1 time for each of the denials that Peter made. And so we see in verse 15, John 21, verse 15, when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? That was the first time. You can imagine Peter was thinking of those denials in that moment when Jesus asked him, do you love me more than these, referring to the other disciples. Verse 16, again Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Now Jesus is the second time going in a little bit deeper. Peter's really feeling that pain, that horrific pain of denying his Lord. Verse 17, the third time, Jesus said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time. Of course he was hurt. He knew. Jesus' examination had revealed things to Simon Peter that he really didn't want to face. He said, Lord, you know all things. you know that I love you. You see, examining our heart after a failure is a good thing. Self-examination is a good thing. It helps us step through that epic fail moment. It helps us maybe get to the root cause of that failure. It allows us to retrace our steps and understand why it is that we failed. But there's something better than self-examination, and that is asking God to examine your heart. Asking God to examine your heart goes a step further. When we ask God to examine us, He will reveal things to us that we either cannot see or maybe we don't want to see ourselves. When we ask God to examine our hearts, He gives us discernment in that moment. Discernment is the ability to decide between truth and error. Discernment is the ability to decide between what is right and what is wrong. Discernment allows us to weigh our motives and understand the effects of our actions. It helps us understand the effects of our words. It brings our epic fail moments into truthful light. Yes, it can be painful, but it will allow us to recognize who we hurt, where we hurt them, why we hurt them, how we hurt them, and when. We will find encouragement from God as we examine our hearts together with Him. And the way you do that, it's just a simple prayer. God, examine my heart. Give God permission to examine your heart and ask Him to reveal things to you. That's how it starts. The second way that God encourages you when you fail is He reminds you to remain humble. He reminds you to remain humble. In English, we have one word that describes love, and that word is love. It's pretty boring. Just one word for love. However, in the Bible, which was written in Greek, there are at least 4 different words for love. Koine Greek has probably about 6 different words for love. And each of those different words for love in Greek has a very specific aspect of love. And in this encounter that we're looking at, there are 2 different Greek words that are used for love. And I'd like for us to take a look at it. I don't mean to get all heady here, but it's important for us to see this and understand how humility plays into this conversation. The first word for love is agapao. Agapao means to love with a deep level of intimacy and affection. It describes that divine love that God has for you. It's a divine love that still loves us despite our shortcomings. And it's a selfless love that we in turn should have for others and for God. So if I have a scale of say 1 to 10, agapao is like 12 or maybe 20. It's off the scale, okay? The second word for love that's used in here is phileo. We get the city name Philadelphia from this, the city of brotherly love, right? Phileo is the kind of love that we have for relatives or for friends. It conveys a range of affection from general emotion to a deep love, but it never goes as deep as agapao. So if agapao is here on that scale of affection, then phileo is down here. Okay? And so it's important for us to look at this. We go through this verses 15 to 17. I inserted those Greek words in there so you can see how they were used. Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Do you agapao me? That high level, deep affection love. Do you love me more than these? And look how Peter responds. He says, yes, Lord. He said, you know that I love you. Phileo. Peter was humble enough not to falsely believe after he denied Jesus 3 times that he could agapao love God. It was a phileo love. It was a lower level love. Again, Jesus said to Simon, son of John, do you love me? Do you agapao me? Notice this time he didn't say more than these, more than the other disciples. Jesus is starting to come down to Peter's level. Peter responds, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Phileo love you. Again, he wouldn't go where Jesus was saying. He was being humble. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Now Jesus switches to phileo love me. Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you phileo love me? And he said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I phileo love you. You see, humility provides freedom for us. Humility provides us freedom from the stress of obtaining a degree of expectation or a degree of success or importance or fame or power. It provides freedom from that stress for us when we are humble in the things we say and do. Researchers at the University of Maine published an article in the Journal of Positive Psychology. And in this article, they stated that humble people are more effective leaders and are valued in social settings due to their tendency to behave more generously, selflessly, and altruistically. Unfortunately, humility is often misunderstood for low self-esteem. Humility does not equal low self-esteem. Here's what humility really is. Humble people have an accurate view of who they are, and they understand their limitations. This often saves them the embarrassment in areas where they lack. It helps them succeed in areas where they are gifted, and they know what areas they need improvement in their lives. Peter was humble in that moment. Peter learned to remain humble. Zig Ziglar, author and motivational speaker, once said, if you learn from defeat, you haven't really lost. Peter learned from his failure and remained humble before the Lord. And we will find encouragement from God when we remain humble in our own failures. The third way that God encourages you when you fail is he teaches you to take responsibility. I probably wouldn't be very transparent if I didn't share my own epic fail moment in this message. You just take a look at me. I'm kind of a big guy. I like to eat. And so I've had many epic fail moments when I've tried to diet. Add that to my family history. My grandfather on my father's side died at age 39 of a heart attack. My father had a heart attack at age 65. He survived. He's still with me today. He's 89. His sister, my aunt, had a heart attack. My grandfather had two brothers who died of a heart attack before age of 50. So the odds are not very good for me. So my doctor would challenge me. And I've been overweight most of my adult life, especially since we had kids, right? Because I have two daughters, and they eat like birds, and I hate wasting food, especially when it's ice cream. And I'm not trying to make an excuse, but the truth is, I like to eat, and I don't like to exercise. I'm being gut-level honest with you guys right now. And so my doctor challenged me, and she said, let me ask you a question, Frank. Do you want to live to see your daughter's wedding? And that pierced my heart, man. That was 10 years ago. Look at me, I'm still fat. I'm still overweight. It didn't pierce my heart enough, and here's why. You know why? Because I thought in my mind, my kids are young. They got plenty of time before they're married. It wasn't real enough for me. I didn't take ownership in that moment. And it wasn't until a friend of mine challenged me when I hit 268 pounds after the holidays. I would get tired. I would complain to him, man, I'm tired. My legs are aching. I can't really even think straight sometimes. My mind is clouded. He's like, dude, you got to lose weight. How much do you weigh? I told him 268. He hit the floor. And so he challenged me. He challenged me to take responsibility for what you put in your mouth. He challenged me to take responsibility for how much I put in my mouth. He challenged me to take responsibility when I'm putting food in my mouth. Am I putting food in my mouth when I'm stressed? Am I putting food in my mouth at midnight when I get up and check out what's in the fridge? He challenged me to get help. And so I took responsibility and I began tracking progress. And I'm happy to say that from February to now, I've now dropped 30 pounds, and I still have more to go. Gained a little bit in Italy. You know, my mother-in-law cooks good. But it's a daily struggle. It's a daily struggle. Making good food choices for me is an opportunity to have an epic fail moment. What is your struggle? What do you need to start taking responsibility for? Do you have someone who keeps you accountable? Do you have someone who is willing and you allow to ask the difficult questions? Peter took responsibility for his words. Matthew 26, verses 31 to 35. We're going to go back in time, the moment of the Last Supper. Then Jesus told them, his disciples, "This very night you will all fall away on account of me, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered." Jesus is referring to an Old Testament prophecy in the book of Zechariah. "But after I have risen," Jesus foretelling his resurrection from the dead, "I will go ahead of you into Galilee." Peter replied, "Even if all fall away on account of you, I never will." "Truly, I tell you," Jesus answered, "this very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. But Peter declared, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." Unfortunately, Peter opened his big mouth again. And then we jump forward. John 21:15, that moment when Jesus has that conversation with Peter. When they finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Remember what you said, Peter?" Look at Peter's response. "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you, period." He didn't say, "Yeah, I love you more than these." He took responsibility for his words. Peter didn't blame others. He didn't play the deflection game. Instead, he took responsibility for the words that he said. He took ownership for what he said, and in humility, he did not dare go there again. And as a pastor, as people come to me, here's what I want to tell you. I see 2 kinds of people when they've got problems in their lives. Whether it's drug addiction, whether it's marriage problems, whether it's a problem at work, what have you. I see 2 kinds of people. Those that take responsibility to their problems and those that do not. And more times than not, those that take responsibility, those are the ones that are on the road to success. Those are the ones that are on the road to overcoming their problems and their epic fail moments. And those that don't take responsibility, all I hear are excuses. They play the blame game. They deflect onto other people. They never take responsibility, and to be honest with you, I've yet to see them overcome their epic fail moments. John Wooden, the former head coach of the UCLA men's basketball team, once said, "You are not a failure until you start blaming others for your mistakes." We will find encouragement from God when we take responsibility for our own failures. I'm going to move real quick through these last 2 points. The fourth way God encourages through failure is he helps you to know your purpose. He helps you to know your purpose. After Jesus died and rose from the dead, and he was starting to show himself to the disciples, the Bible tells us that Peter went back to fishing. I don't think this was, "Hey guys, let's go fishing. I just want to have a little relaxing afternoon." I don't think it was that. I think Peter was very discouraged about what had happened. His own failure. The man he was following, Jesus Christ, just died on a cross. And now he's appearing to us again. What's going on? He was probably getting flack from his wife. "Come on, you got to get to work, buddy. Put some food on the table." So Peter went back to what he knew best. He went back to his old job of being a fisherman. But Jesus had a different purpose in mind for Peter's life. Jesus didn't want Peter to go back to fishing. He wanted him to become a shepherd of people, a pastor. John 21, verses 15 through 17, again, little snippets of it. Look at what Jesus says to Peter. 3 times, Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." 3 times Jesus said it, once for each time that Peter denied him. He confirmed 3 times he wanted Peter to be a pastor, not a fisherman. He confirmed his calling, and for me, that shows that Peter was forgiven. This is confirmed in history. When you look at Peter's life, he went from being a follower of Jesus to one of the early church leaders, to the apostle to the Jewish people. He was a great preacher and an author of multiple books in the Bible. He fed Jesus' lambs, the new Christian. He took care of the sheep, the mature Christian. He led a church. That was the purpose that Jesus had in mind for him, not to go back to be a mere fisherman. So what is your purpose? Did you know that God has a purpose for you? Do not let the stigma of failure prevent you from knowing God's purpose for your life. And at Lakeshore, we want to help you. We have classes to help you. They're called New Horizon classes. Our core classes are coming up on October 1st. Would love to see you sign up and start to figure out your purpose in life. You can stop out at the Get Connected area and sign up. One of the classes in particular helps you understand your spiritual gifts and how God shaped you to serve Him and His people. Newsflash, you used to have to be a member to take 301. We removed that requirement. It's open to everybody. You just have to take 101 and 201 first. Would love to have you guys sign up for those classes. Stop out at the Get Connected area today. End of commercial. Here's the point. Failure did not disqualify Peter from fulfilling God's purpose for him, and it certainly does not disqualify you. You will be encouraged when you know God's purpose in your life. Let us help you as a church figure that out. The fifth and final way that God encourages you when you fail is He invites you to discover your true identity. John 21, verses 18 and 19. Jesus wraps up the conversation with Peter by saying something very unusual. He says, "Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to Peter, "Follow me." He reinvites Peter to follow him. He says to Peter, "Leave the fishing boat. Leave the fishing boat behind. That represents epic failure. And put your identity, Peter, in me." Peter, your life is going to be difficult, is essentially what he told. In fact, Peter was arrested. He was led away in chains in Rome, and he was crucified himself for his faith in Jesus. Now, I'm not saying when you put your faith in Jesus, you're going to be crucified like Peter was. But this tells me that life is not always a bowl of cherry as a Christian. The difference is we now have the right focus. We have a God who's with us. And when we put our identity in Jesus Christ alone, we will glorify God no matter what we face, even unto death. So what are you putting your identity in? Have you put your identity in an epic failure? Or have you put your identity in Jesus Christ? Let me encourage you with this final thought. Failure is a word that is used to describe an attempt you made, not the person you are. Failure is a word that describes an attempt you made, not the person you are. So if you put your identity in Jesus Christ, who are you? Well, let me tell you. The Bible is very clear. When your identity is in Jesus, you are chosen. You are adopted into God's family. You are a child of the King, an heir to the throne, a servant of the one true God. When your identity is in Jesus, you are loved, madly loved. You are forgiven, you are holy, you are cherished. When you put your identity in Jesus Christ, you are new, you are transformed, and you are victorious over whatever epic fail moment has knocked you down. When you put your identity in Jesus Christ, you are not just a citizen here in the United States, you have citizenship in heaven. When you put your identity in Jesus Christ, God says, "You are mine." Let's pray. Father, thank you. Thank you that we can learn from Peter. It's easy for us to sit in our Monday morning armchair quarterback position and criticize Peter. That's not the intention, Lord. The intention is that you show us and learn, that we can learn from his life, Father. Father, thank you that there is no epic failure too big to stop us from knowing you. There is no epic failure too big to stop us from growing in our faith. There is no epic failure too big to stop us from having a purpose and an identity in you. Help us examine our hearts. Help us remain humble. Help us to take responsibility once and for all for the things that we own. Help us to make change in our lives, Father. And Father, I know there are people here right now, this idea of putting my identity in Jesus is a foreign concept to them. I know there are people here right now that feel like life is one big epic failure, that they've given up on it and that they can't do it themselves. They're here seeking answers. And so today, Father, I pray that you would help them understand the need they have in their lives for you. If I just described you, would you invite Jesus in right now? The Bible tells us he knocks on the door of our hearts. He's waiting for us to open that door. Would you open that door and let him in? And the way you do that, you just say, Jesus, I need you in my life. I recognize I can't do life on my own. I recognize I'm a sinner. I recognize you are perfect, holy God who died on the cross for my sins. And I receive your forgiveness today. I receive your forgiveness. Help me make a 180 in my life and walk with you. Help me turn my epic failures into victory, Father. And let me grow. I receive your free gift of salvation today, and I want to be a citizen of heaven. If you said that prayer, you are adopted into God's family. And he wants you to grow in him. Jesus, thank you for these things. Thank you for this message today. May we learn and grow from your word every day. In Jesus' name, amen.